All right, good evening. We're going to call the meeting to order. Commissioner Sandoval may walk in a few minutes late. We are waiting for him, but we do have quorum this evening without him, so we're going to go ahead and go forward. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting for November 21st, 2024. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this meeting, evening's meeting, are here in City Hall. We also have staff from the city's attorney and the city's clerk's office, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting. However, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org. and they will reply as quickly as possible. If you simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to watch this streaming on the city's YouTube channel. You can access it at meridiancity.org/live. With that, we will begin with roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Garrett,
Here.
Commissioner Grace,
Here.
Commissioner Seal,
Here.
Commissioner Rust,
Here.
Chairperson Lorcher.
Here. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. There are no changes to tonight's agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second to adopt tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the consent agenda. We have several items on the consent agenda to approve the minutes of the November 7th Planning and Zoning meeting, facts, findings, and conclusions of laws for Tone Fitness Studio and Pine 43 West. Could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and second to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. At this time, I would briefly like to explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and our unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will only be called once during public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. You may come to the microphones in chambers or be unmuted on Zoom. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen and our clerk will help you run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like a HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who wish to testify. If you wish to speak on a topic, you may come forward in chambers, or if on Zoom, press the raise hand button in the Zoom app, or if you're only listening on a telephone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, such as a computer or a phone, please be sure to mute those extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you are finished, if the commission does not have any questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we will not call on you a second time. After all the testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have an opportunity to discuss and hopefully make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. So going forward tonight, we are going to open our public hearings with a continuance of Summerlin West for annexation preliminary plat. And it's going to be very specific. So I want to read the motion that we had from the November 7th meeting because we're not going to talk about the entire application. So, and we're going to allow testimony from a representative from CUNA School District. Allow additional facts and findings of testimony regarding the community public meeting. And additional facts and findings of testimony regarding the disputed private road to the immediate north of the property. And with that, we will defer to staff to see if there are any comments they would like to make before we invite the applicant up.
Madam Chair, Commission, the staff has no comments at this time. We'll wait until after everyone has done their presentations.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Grace.
So while I was not at the November 7th meeting, which was the original meeting for this agenda item, I have read the minutes from that meeting and I've read the relevant public comments that have been submitted, and as well as the agenda packet materials for tonight. And I do feel like I can participate in this item.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Ready
Good
for me?
evening.
Hi, everybody. Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant. And so the three items that we wanted to follow up on. First, I think the question, as I understood it, was follow up with the mayors in response to the neighborhood meeting. And so just to give you a little bit of background, again, the neighborhood meeting was held on May 23rd at 6 p.m. We did hold it via Zoom using the webinar function. That allows us to see when folks enter and when they leave. The Myers entered at 6:07. They left at the same time as everyone else at 6:19. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we do use the Q&A function. And let me give you a little background on why. I don't know if any of you guys have run a neighborhood meeting before. Neighborhood meetings have gotten a little different in the last few years. They can be a little bit interesting. I've had recent neighborhood meetings where folks have knocked clipboards out of my hand. People can be very aggressive. You have to worry, frankly, about crowd control at this point. So one of the ways that we've worked on that is to use that webinar function and to use the Q&A function. The Q&A allows everyone who has a question to put that in. We have the opportunity to answer it. So for example, when we did the Sky Ranch application, you guys might remember that down on Locust Grove, or excuse me, Lake Hazel. The participants were very lively on that one. We answered probably 30 questions on the Q&A, and at the end of that, we had a record of all the questions that came up, and we were able to respond to all of that and follow up with folks. So it's really good for record keeping. It's worked very well. After that meeting, well, during the meeting, we informed everyone, please use the Q&A. No questions came up. We put Laren Bailey's email and phone number into the Q&A so people could follow up with him if they were having a hard time. After that, we reached out to the Myers 16 different times by email, by phone, and by personal visit. And finally, we were able to connect with them earlier this week. So Laren spent a little while on the phone with Mr. Meyer, walked through all the concerns. So, the neighborhood meeting is something where there's an intent to be able to provide the information, give people a heads up about what's happening. We think we satisfied that. And again, we followed up more than a dozen times with the Myers after that. So next, I think the next item would be the Cavalli Lane. And Linda, can I have my slide presentation? Because it might be helpful to have a picture here. So on that one, you guys had asked us to go back and see if there's something that can be sorted out on the Cavalli Lane entrance. We did spend a good amount of time with Mr. Bruno after the hearing. It was actually a really pleasant conversation. He's a really interesting guy, interesting background. We walked away that night thinking that we were on the same page. The emails obviously suggest that we weren't on the same page. So we followed up again with Mr. Bruno today. And I just want to kind of walk you through where things stand. And I can find it from here, Linda. So I think there's two things to keep in mind. One is the sewer and one is the access. I think those are really the two issues. So with regard to sewer, our project, about the western third of it sewers towards Locust Grove. The rest of it sewers north towards the future collectors and Discovery Park. We are bringing sewer down Locust Grove in our first phase. So the sewer will be there. We will not be preventing anybody from accessing that sewer. And in fact, we would be enabling it by bringing it there. If Public Works allows Mr. Bruno's property to sewer that way, we obviously are not going to get in the way of that. We do not think we're an impediment to that sewer. And we've talked to Mr. Bruno and indicated that it will be in the first phase. And so I think that's a good thing. With regard to access, I just want to clarify, ACHD is not cutting off access now. ACHD has only indicated that upon redevelopment that the accesses would be combined, right? So I want to emphasize that nothing we are doing is going to cut off access to Locust Grove now or in the future. So the property, as you can see here, there is a significant access on the north against the east-west collector along Discovery. There's access on the east against the new collector. There's 4 more connection points with stubs. And so if ACHD says, which we understand they will, says the public street access is going to be Summerlin Drive on our property, his property will continue to have access because they will go through the stub onto a road that we have built so that it won't be at his cost to build the road all the way out to Locust Grove. So we don't think we're precluding either sewer access or Locust Grove access for that property. And I believe we're on the same page now, but I'll let Mr. Bruno speak for himself on that. And then I think the last item was the CUNA School District. And we had provided our comments from before, our concerns about the legality. I think what I'd do on that one is just listen to what CUNA School District has to say and then maybe use my time on rebuttal to respond to that part. We did reach out to CUNA School District. Mr. Bailey spoke with them last week. Sounds like it's kind of still in the same position of voluntary contribution in order to be able to say we can serve, which is, as you know, we believe is problematic. But I'll just set that aside for now. But just as a reminder, in case I don't hit it during the rebuttal, these were the modifications that we would be requesting if we're fortunate enough to get a recommendation of approval. So I just wanted to, since it's been a couple of weeks, maybe remind everybody of that. Any questions for me?
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant before we invite CUNA School District up?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Garrett?
What is the build-out time for this? What do you estimate?
Yeah, I think, had a slide on that, Commissioner Garrett. There we go. So the estimated build out is we would have our first final plat likely in 2025. That means first houses coming on in 2026. And then from there, approximately an 8-year build out with, so 6 final plats and then a couple of years after that to deliver the remainder of the homes.
Are those figures at the bottom cumulative or is it the 60 includes, or the 140 includes the 60?
That's cumulative. Yeah. So about, call it 40 homes per year is the estimate.
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we would like to invite the CUNA School District up to maintain our kind of standards of our public meetings. Since you are representing a group, you'll have 10 minutes for your presentation. And if you can tell us your name and address for the record, it would be appreciated.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chairman, Chairwoman Lorcher, and Commissioners for your time. Appreciate the invitation to come back and just kind of clarify some things and help you out. But my name is Jason Reddy. Do you want my personal address or our business address, I guess? Does it matter?
I don't think it matters, but your business
So
address.
711 East Porter for the CUNA School District, and I live in Meridian at 466 East Crest Ridge.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I do have some slides. So I currently serve as the Assistant Superintendent for the CUNA School District. I also have with me tonight Tim Jensen. He's one of the leaders in our district working on the development stuff. So he may try to help answer questions if you guys have them too. So I have a few slides to share with you that just wanted to kind of help clarify things and just add some or clear up any miscommunication that we may have accidentally shared with you. So first things first, I just want to make sure that I say right out front, like we are not against development. Our CUNA School District is not against development. That's not why we send denial letters or approval letters or whatever. We want things to grow and we want them to develop and grow in the correct way. So let me see if I can add a little bit of information to that. So I just hit the, good to go. Okay, perfect. So some of the work that we've done, and I'll talk about a little bit of history here in a second, but we have, looked at some of the different legal requirements and some of the expectations. And if you look at 6511, the zoning ordinance, it says that particular consideration shall be given to the effects of any proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision, including public services and including school districts. It specifically calls out school districts. And so I do think that there is an essence in which us as a district feels like it is our responsibility to help inform you and communicate with you when you're considering things for zoning. So we're not here to be contentious. We're not here to be combative. We're trying to fulfill what the expectation of the law is. And at the end of the day, I mean, you guys, I believe, have to make the recommendation to City Council, right? So we're just here to provide information and help however we can explain the situation and what impact certain developments may have on our district. So with that, a little bit of background, just to give you some context about how we got to this place. In July of 2022, our school board voted unanimously for us to work on a plan to mitigate the financial impacts that development is having on the CUNA School District. And so we looked at those bullet points that are on this slide. It says share impact to developers on school capacity and other decision makers and what those things, what impact that might have on us. So through that process, we worked on a plan, used a study, a company, an independent third party to come and do an analysis for us to look at like what would a mitigation support look like. And so through that work, I guess you could say, through that process, we landed on a mitigation fee of $3,279 per door. And that, I want to be clear, like we're not asking for someone to cover the whole cost of what this might be, right? This is just to alleviate some of the pressure to allow us to be able to adjust things around and try to absorb the growth in a feasible way. It would be like impossible for us to estimate the value or the cost of a development forever on our school district. So this is like a one-time kind of ask, I guess. For those that are willing to work with us and partner with us, that's really what we're looking for is collaboration and partnership with developers so that we can maintain healthy communities, healthy schools, right? It's one of those things that we hear a lot about in marketing from realtors is that we have good school districts, we have healthy communities, and we want to make sure that we can continue to do that. So that's why we kind of landed on that process for mitigation. The next slide is just for context for you. I won't spend a lot of time here, but these are some of the pressures that are put on our school district, some of the things that we have to consider and deal with as we look at, how the funding model is built in Idaho. I'm sure you were aware that many school districts, West Ada, us, in fact, almost 80% of the school districts in our state have to have a supplemental levy on the books just to maintain normal operations. And those levies are for learning. That's for books, textbooks, teachers, things like that. In order for us to have a bond, it requires a supermajority, and that's the financial mechanism we have in place from our legislature to build a building, to add on to buildings. Those bonds require a supermajority to pass, and we're one of 2 states in the entire United States that has that expectation or threshold to meet, which is fine. I mean, we're willing to do the things and we want our taxpayers' voice. But when we talk about growth and there's a gap there between when a development goes in and it starts to get built out from when we can pass a bond, build, add on to our buildings. So just want to make sure that is clear. So I have put on here a few things. I listened back to the conversation that you had a couple weeks ago, and I just wanted to try and give clarity, and I'm happy to field any questions on these two if you have them. So first of all, I did hear from the developer that we have established I guess you might say, a legal pay-to-play model. And we're not saying that we are never going to support a development if they are unwilling to work with us. In fact, I'm not even sure we have a legal authority to do that. We can say that we can't get behind this, but we can't deny that's your job and city council's job. Our job is to say, we need to serve the kids in our schools, and we need to make sure that their classes are in a size that is helpful and good for learning. I am not a developer. That's not what I do. I am an educator. I'm not going to come in and tell you guys how to do your job or how a developer, where to put what road and how many fire hydrants they need and things like that. But the expectation is that we would provide context and information about what we can support and what we cannot support. The growth in CUNA, I'm sure you are aware, has been on a steady incline. And so we are in a place where we need to say that if a development or a developer is not willing to help us mitigate some of the cost for those projects, that we would not support that. That's where you got that letter. We did provide, and I understand the confusion in this, we did provide and say if a developer is willing to partner with us, and we do have a lot of developers that do that, just so you know, there's lots of those out there. If they're willing to support us and willing to help us mitigate some of those costs, then absolutely we can support you, and thank you for that. We have identified, our board has identified 3 things where we would ask for, are you willing to give us cash by the door fee, land for future buildings, future schools, or other gifts in kind? There are other things that we need, like parking lots and bus lanes and different things like that, that if a developer wants to be a part of our district, we're willing to provide a list of those kinds of things. The open enrollment question I know may come up, that I know there's some confusion about that in Idaho law and some of the changes recently, so I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Are we able to support or not support? I think I clarified that for you. And then there is the difference between the mitigation and the impact. We're not leveraging an impact fee. We're legally not allowed to do that. So that's not what we're doing. We're really, at the end of the day, we're simply asking for partnership from developers to come to the table with us and try to solve a problem. I did hear some questions and some confusion about our enrollment numbers, and that there was the potential that we were trying to, quote unquote, inflate our numbers and not provide accurate or truthful information. And I understand why that would be confusing. Enrollment numbers change. They fluctuate over the course of a year, all year. As a school leader, as a superintendent, we see that. That's very common. We are not necessarily, there's some confusion about pre-K. The reality is in May, we had to close one of our buildings because we couldn't fund that number of staff members. So we closed half of a building, which created some shifts of moving different programs to different facilities. And so we needed to look at a way to actually correctly record that and track that from our perspective. So when you hear things like we're manipulating the numbers, we're really not trying to manipulate them. We're trying to accurately represent what happens in our buildings every day. And then lastly, I think really I just want to make sure that we're talking about partnership. We're asking for people to partner with us, to work with us, to make sure that our communities are healthy, our schools are healthy, and that our kids that move into those communities are supported and educated well. And with that, I will stand for any other questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Redding?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Garrett?
When you looked at the proposal, did you factor in the development over time or just the number of homes?
Help me understand your, like, over the life of the development being.
well, the development is going to build 40, roughly, there's, plus or minus 300 homes.
Okay.
And they're going to build at 40 homes a year. So when you look at that, do you factor into your enrollment and the cost of that they're going to have 40 kids of various ages, who knows, from high school to, preschool. And then you have a situation where you've got students graduating or leaving. So what is the net number? I mean, how do you look at that?
Yeah, the enrollment, like I said, enrollments change during a year and from year to year, and different cohorts of kids. One might be smaller, one might be bigger. Do we look at long-term strategic planning? Absolutely. Are we planning to try to finish building out our Swan Falls High School and make it a comprehensive high school? Yes. I think that answers your question.
Well, more specifically to this one, I was referring to the letter you wrote that you couldn't support it, but then did you factor in that it would not come on stream? The whole home to be completed, the project, but in fact, it would be staggered over a period of years.
Yeah, that is definitely something we consider. I think it's like we're at a snapshot in time right now where we need to provide feedback to you because this is on your desk. And so that's where our board has asked us to engage in this process with our different entities, planning and zoning and city councils. So yes, we consider that it's going to be a long-term build, and that over the course of those years, our building capacity may change or may not change, might grow. Our projections were that this CUNA school district would probably double in size in the next 10 years. It doubled in the previous 10 years. And so the Tischler-Bice study said that that's probably what we should expect. We haven't exactly stayed on track with that. I think we've fallen, our enrollment numbers have dropped a bit smaller than what was projected, but it's still in that kind of upward trajectory. Does that help? Thank you.
Commissioner Rust?
Madam Chair, do you have any future development for new schools in the pipeline? Can you speak to that? If you're planning on doubling again, you can't have imagined, or the plan can't be to just use the facilities as is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. We have tried to run a bond to continue building and growing our physical capacity. That unfortunately failed a year ago in November. Our district, our school board is considering the possibility of having another bond, but I don't know that we're there. We haven't officially made that decision yet or not.
I think the applicant had shown in the last meeting that enrollment was projected to drop. You just mentioned cohorts can differ.
Sure.
It seemed like the data showed that cohorts were actually dropping in the classes that are coming up. Can you share any details around enrollment projections that maybe are more specific beyond doubling every 10 years?
I could. I didn't bring any of that data with me today. I'm happy to come back and share it with you. We do have, if you look at it, like I'm trying to remember the slide. I think we have our 6th grade cohort. That's from last year. I think those are now 7th graders. Was lower, but then there's others that are higher, and there's some that are bigger that follow. It really does. And this is a normal thing we see in schools all the time, that there is this kind of like ebb and flow, but it's not drastic. We're not talking about a difference of 1,000 kids. We're talking about a difference of 50 kids or 100 kids across our whole district, which we have 11 schools, like 6,000 kids. So, yeah.
Madam Chair, one more if I could. I appreciate you're in a difficult position as an educator, and the board has directed you to take, your board has directed you to take these steps. You're the one standing in front of us here today, and you kind of explained the pay for play in a way that kind of left me back where we were 2 weeks ago, that you can't force someone to pay. You can't run an impact fee. That's not obviously according to Idaho statute. And yet you also said that you're categorically denying any applicant, or you're not approving any applicant or supporting any that doesn't pony up the $32.79 per student or per door. I find that just unsavory, frankly. I read through this letter that you guys provided to us, and I don't think this was probably your fault, but it was addressed to the Canyon County Planning and Zoning Commissioners. I just don't think there's a lot of thought that's gone into this. It just seems very blanket, which is not how we should be approaching these issues. So that's probably a message more for your board than for you. But I found the explanation that you gave fairly convoluted and not very substantive.
Is there a way I could help you have more substance?
I don't believe maybe there is. Is there a way that this is like, are you guys evaluating on their merits? It doesn't seem to me that you're evaluating applications on their merits. The merit is you either are partnering with us in the way that we're asking, which is money or in-kind donations, or we're not going to support the project. Is it really that simple?
It really is that simple. Yeah, I think that is the merit, right? Like that is what we're talking about. My job is not to look at access roads and access to sewer and how far you are away from the nearest power station or whatever. I don't even know what that means, frankly. That's your job, right? That's the developer's job. We believe we are fulfilling the expectation of the law to provide you our feedback. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Commissioner Grace?
Thanks, Madam Chair. You mentioned that you successfully have worked with, in a partnership with other developers. I'm wondering what you think or what your thoughts are on what made that successful, or, is this just too big of a project, or have they been smaller in size? I'm trying to get a sense of what allowed that kind of partnership and collaboration in the past, maybe, and what the problem is here.
I would love to hear from the developer on that also. We have seen partnerships with other developers that have been bigger and been smaller than this project. We're always willing to talk to them, and typically what happens, we'll see a pre-application, and Tim, help me out if I get it wrong. We'll see an application come out, and we will go to those meetings and then try to connect with that developer offline and say, hey, we want to support this. Can we talk about what that might look like? Some developers will entertain those conversations, and some just absolutely will not, and accuse us of extortion or something, which I understand why it's confusing. It is confusing. It's a challenge. We've just met with a developer a couple of months ago that's planning a project bigger than this one. And they came to us and said, we want to work with you. We understand this is the process in CUNA. What can we do? Can we have some conversations? We were willing to work with them and say, hey, you are putting a development in. We need a parking lot. You're going to have asphalt. You're going to have concrete. You're going to have contractors. How about you build us a parking lot, which would actually cost less than the per door fee? Could we partner in that way and figure out a solution to this problem? Because if we don't have to pay for the parking lot out of our general fund, that allows us to move things around so that we can support our students. So in that way, that's where the mitigation comes. We're not like looking for bribes or whatever, if that's what it appears to be. And that developer, ironically, they said, you know what, we would rather just pay you cash per door as it's developed over the next 7 years or something like that. Instead of doing the parking lot, we would rather just give you the money. Okay, thank you.
Just one more follow-up, Madam Chair. So what happens when you're over capacity? I've seen the percentages and that kind of thing. I don't know that I've been explained what the reality, so what happens?
Yeah, class sizes get bigger, for one, which we know is one of the leading indicators of student success or not. Right now, in one of our elementary schools, we are using the teacher's lounge as a classroom because that school is over capacity. Things like that. Principals like Tim have to get really creative about how they build their schedules and what rooms they utilize and don't utilize. Like we have one of our technology people is literally using a broom closet for his office in one of our buildings because he doesn't have a place where he can be housed in that building. things like that.
Use modulars or
I'm sorry?
use modulars?
We do, yeah, we have a few modulars. We would prefer not to do that because there are some safety concerns that come along with putting portables up, making sure they're fenced, they're protected. We spend a lot of money on access control to make sure, not anybody can just walk up to a classroom and let themselves in or knock on the door. So we do have a few, but that's not a common practice, and it's something that we've tried to stay away from if possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question. So we're the city of Meridian, and this particular project that we're talking about is specifically in the city of Meridian. But the school would be the CUNA School District. So for an open enrollment for someone who technically doesn't live in your city, does that mean you have the choice to decline their enrollment because of overcapacity?
So they wouldn't be open enrolling with us. So the CUNA School District actually has Nampa addresses, Boise addresses, Meridian addresses. They would be open enrolling with the West Ada School District. And I spoke with one of their district leaders last week, and he shared with me the same thing that he would share with anybody, that people are welcome to open enroll, but it does not mean that you automatically get in. Some schools are full, some schools are not. Some programs are full, some programs are not. And so they would consider those applications as they came.
Okay, so if I'm living in this particular community, that I'm enrolled in the West Ada School District, right? That's what you're telling me? And then, but the area of impact would be in the CUNA School District. No, am I getting it wrong? Can you tell me that again?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, it's okay. So our school district boundaries, the area that we are responsible to serve is in the Meridian city limits. So those students will come to us. They are required to attend the CUNA School District, or I should say, rather,
The
if they
boundary.
live there, we are required to serve them.
Gotcha.
We do not have the option to say to that family and that kid, it would be illegal for us to do that, to say we don't have space for you, or even though you live in our boundaries, we can't take you. You have to go open enroll at Meridian, or at West Ada, I'm sorry. But again, West Ada is not necessarily obligated to accept those students. They would consider each student and their application to open enroll on that individual kid, one at a time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
You explained that well. Thank you. One more question, and you may not have the answer because it's not in your jurisdiction. So, we're talking about your school district and how you have this partnership that you want to create. Do you know if Boise and West Ada have similar relationships with their developers as well? I mean, did you kind of follow suit of what has already been established in our community? Or is this unique to your community?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. This is very unique to CUNA. We have been asked by lots of school districts around the state how we've developed this process. I would say that Boise and West Ada do not have the same kind of pressures that we do. Boise's declining in enrollment. West Ada is the biggest school district in the state of Idaho. So they have intentionally not engaged in this process the same way that we have.
But I do know developers have provided land for their schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Typically elementary schools, because that's the least impact. I think the numbers are 75 acres for a high school, 55 acres for a middle school, and 25 acres-ish for
25 to 30,
elementary
yeah.
schools to be part of that. I lived in Parkside Creek at 10 Mile and Cherry, and the school was actually, within the subdivision. And I cannot verify that for sure, but I'm pretty sure the developer probably provided that land. And then it was up to West Ada to come up with the money to build the school.
Correct. Yeah. I met with another large developer that I don't know if we name drop in here or not, but that has donated lots of land to West Ada School District and to us. And there is some frustration on his part about how slow districts are to build on that property, because the subdivision will be built. It will be there for several years, but because of the bonding challenges that we have, sometimes it can take a long time to actually physically build the building there.
Right.
Yeah.
One more question. Governor Little is going to start to distribute some of the monies for infrastructure for schools. Is that just for maintenance and repairs, or does that include actually helping you build schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. House Bill 521 for the CUNA School District, I think our first payment we've got it's about $18 million. Currently just in maintenance and repairs. And the money was designated to districts to help the backlog of maintenance issues.
Bonds and levies?
Yeah. So we have 18 million in the bank right now from them that we just got a couple of weeks ago. We have about $50 million of actual maintenance that that needs to be done to our buildings.
Right. I think West Data said in order to run their school district, they need $1 billion over the next 10 years, and they're not getting that.
Yeah, I think 1.1, they paid somebody to go do the study for them, 1.1 billion, and I think they got, do you remember, Tim, what it was? Like they got more than we did.
Right.
Which is right. That's what they should do. But,
Got it. All right. Any other questions for Jason? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right. Based on the three items that we had in regard to this, we've talked to the CUNA School District. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else who are going to testify on the items that are up for discussion?
Madam Chair, thank you. No one has signed up.
Is there anybody in chambers that would like to speak in regard to these items? Person on Zoom will get you next. Hi, if you can state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
All right, David, excuse me, David Crawford, Centurion Engineers. We're here to speak about the Cavalli Lane access on behalf of Robert Bruno. Anna Canning spoke at the last meeting. She's out of town, so I'm here to kind of fill in the gap. We wrote some recent letters that came in today that were disputing or wanted to come to an agreement to utilize the existing Cavalli Lane location. We were able to meet with the developer and representatives and come up to a satisfactory conclusion. We really appreciate the work that they did to bring us to this point, but we'd like to withdraw our objections.
Okay.
So, all right.
All right. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, who is on Zoom?
Madam Chair, Tony Mayer is raising his hand.
All right. Mr. Mayor, if you can state your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Tony Mayer, and I'm here with my wife, Jeannie Mayer.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes to be able to testify.
Okay, I've given some handouts, and I'll briefly go through those. I'm assuming the commission has those in front of them. I was requested to meet with the representatives of Black Rock Homes, and which I did with Lauren, and I submitted a list to him of my issues, and if you have those before you, I'd like to go through those. Number one is the neighborhood meeting. I'm still contending that the Conga Group failed their requirements for the neighborhood meeting. It was a 5/23/24. I know they suggested that they did, but I did do some other research on this meeting, and also in front of you, you should have an email string that I had with them the day of that meeting. And if you can find the document that it's got my name at the top and it's got some black lines, I'd like to address those. At 5:58, I tried logging into their system because they had notified us via postcard. I logged in, and then I stated on the bottom, and this is from the actual email transaction between us and the Conga Group. I said, Lauren, I logged in and don't find the neighborhood meeting. Please call me. It's at my phone number. And that was at 5:58, 2 minutes before. At 6:14, 16 minutes after, the meetings had started, and I said, I cannot speak to you, no microphone connection. And then at 6:17, I said, terrible meeting, can't hear you, can't talk to you. And then again at 6:22, which is when they just indicated that the meeting ended, I said, the setup does not work, no two-way discussion. I have several questions. Why not have a real live meeting? This was a waste of time. And then the meeting ended. I also did a search of all emails that transacted between myself and the Conger Group. And that's also attached. There's 5 of them there. 4 of them were the meeting, and the 5th one is this latest one, the Conger Group, in which I listed these items to them. So I still contend that they never met the requirements. I don't know what he's talking about, but they never did reach back out to me and suggest, hey, come on down, look at these prints. The only time they came back was after this last meeting, and they were directed to get a hold of me. So I'll go on. Number 2, I indicated them, I think they need larger lots. I live in the 10-acre parcels immediately to the south. There's several of them there, and they are buffering with our 8 lots. I contend they need R2, R4. This is an agricultural area. There's a canal there. Activity related agriculture, irrigation equipment, tractors, vehicles, pumps, piping, ditches, all that is there. There needs to be a bigger buffer. And staff recommended a larger buffer, and the Conger Group thinks they don't need that. Number 3 is fencing. I indicated them, I think they need a fence along the Rawson Canal for safety reasons, if not other reasons, vandalism. The Conger Group indicated to me there is a fence along that separates their property from the Rawson Canal. I didn't see that on the prints, but I hope that's the case. They said they are planning on putting one in, so that resolves that item.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you'll need to finish up, please.
Okay, so the 4th item is the roads. I also submitted a picture of the road of Locust Grove. It's a dramatic congestion problem waiting to happen there, and it's already backed up. I think they need to widen out. They need to put a lane there. I took a picture and submitted to the council. I don't see how they're going to get another lane there. There's telephone poles. They already laid out in the Hadler subdivision a large concrete pad. So there doesn't look like to me they're planning on doing any widening there. And then schools, you just heard from the CUNA School District. They don't have the capacity. And the Charter Academy, we call them, they have very limited. And of course, West Data is you have to contact them, and it's done by case basis. I don't see how that
Mr.
can't.
Mayor, you'll have to finish up. You're past your time.
Yes. Okay, Mike, in the end, I think that you got to pay attention to schools. You can't just continue. One thing I heard is you can't look at this development by itself. There's multiple other developments going on at the same time. You can't just say, hey, this is 40 school or 40 homes a year. There's probably, if you added them all up, there's probably 200, 400 homes a year that CUNA has to deal with. You can't just look at this myopically with one school. You got to get behind this school district. These developers need to contribute to what they're costing on the community. You can't just lay this on the community after the developer's done and say, gee, we need new schools. And
All
then,
right, Mr. Meyer, I'll have to cut you off there.
okay.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else that would like to testify?
Madam Chair, no one else.
Would the applicant like to come forward to address some of the items that have been presented tonight?
Might as well while I'm here, right? Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant. Linda, can I have my slides one more time? While she's bringing those up, we appreciate that there are always strong feelings about applications. We went ahead and pulled our file, after the Zoom, which the Myers logged in on at 6:07, left at 6:19. At 6:16, Mr. Meyer sent the email that he mentioned, the terrible meeting, can't hear you. Within 3 minutes, Laren sent an email saying, yes, I will call you tomorrow. The next day at 8:23 a.m., he sent an email, said, Tony, I'm willing to meet with you at any time. Please let me know what works best for you. Thank you. On July 2nd, he sent an email saying, Tony, I'm following up on the neighborhood meeting that we conducted a few weeks ago. I mean, on and on. So they may not have shown up in Mr. Mayor's search, but I can assure you that there was a great deal of outreach that was done there. With regard to the transitioning, it's about 400 feet from our property to the mayor's home. That's LDR along that transition, and our density is perfectly appropriate for LDR. And if, as I mentioned at the last meeting, if those parcels redevelop, it's going to be an assemblage that'll be pretty expensive. And so they will require density to match ours in order for that to work. The fence will be on the Rawson. That's a requirement. That will happen as a matter of course. And then last, the roads have been studied by ACHD, and Locust Grove is being widened all the way to Columbia. There's, as part of this project and the others that are happening, there's going to be the new north-south collector up to Discovery Park. I think it's called Recreation. So that will take pressure off of Locust Grove as well. And again, this is like a typical application. ACHD reviewed it, approved, and we've jumped through those hoops on the traffic side of things. So let's talk about schools. So, you know, everybody wants the schools to be successful. Like we're not, you know, an exception to that rule. But, you know, we do have concerns with the way that this has been approached. I think it's clear based on the testimony tonight that this is explicitly a pay-for-play situation. You know, this is the language from the letter. To be able to serve this development, we need the voluntary contribution. The last sentence of that same letter, when partnerships are established that favorably impact our ability to serve a particular development, we will inform the Canyon County P&Z commissioners, should be you guys, office through an amended letter. In other words, we'll change the letter if you give us the voluntary contribution. I mean, it's just unfortunate. I wish it weren't being approached that way. And this is really what it comes down to, is that Idaho Code 676513 says that any fee mitigating the impacts of development has to satisfy the Impact Fee Act. So, you know, it's just unfortunate that you're being put in this position where you're being asked to evaluate this based on that approach. It seems pretty clear based on the discussions that this is not an evaluation that's being made based on any particular project. I think that was conceded to tonight, that every project just gets this letter and we will serve you if you do the mitigation. And it's just not a good way to do it. It's not done in any other jurisdiction. West Ada doesn't do it that way. I don't know of any other school district that does it that way. So it's unfortunate, but you know, we feel compelled that that's not something that we should be a part of. And as you all know, this came up about a year and a half ago at Hadler, which was, I think, the first time that there was a subdivision within the city of Meridian. The CUNA School District made a similar request. You know, city council rejected it, had almost exactly the same conversation that Commissioner Rust had with them. And, you know, city council saw it for what it was and said, no, that's not the way we're going to do that. So with that, I think I would refrain from any other comment. So.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Grace?
Thanks, Mr. Clark. So other than well, not other, but aside from the manner in which, you know, things played out, have you offered to do anything for the school district? And if so, what?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Grace. So we have reached out, we've had conversations with them. The response was that we would like to have this $3,000 fee. And 380 lots, $3,000 fee, they want a $1.2 million commitment. And that 1.2 million can go toward anything. It doesn't go into as I understand it, doesn't go into a designated fund. As you all know, impact fees have to go into a particularized fund. They have to be used for particular issues. If they're not used within a particular amount of time, they have to be returned. That's not what we're talking about here. This is just kind of a slush fund kind of a situation. And so, we've kind of taken the approach that if that is what is being requested, then we don't feel good participating in it that way. But that's not to say that we're not willing to help. We as part of BCA have reached out to CUNA School District in the past and said, hey, let us help you run a bond. Like that's really what needs to happen. The kind of piecemeal approach on all of this is my own personal comment. Like, I worry that saying that we're gonna make the developers pay this makes it harder to run a bond, because the general public would say, well, aren't the developers gonna pay for it? Why would we vote for a bond? We've offered to do, through the BCA, to do that, and that's not been successful. And so, given that, we're kind of stuck where we are.
Just a follow up if I could. So I understand that you might take the approach of, well, a letter of support isn't worth that much to us. We feel like we have a good project in that approach. But I don't really view it as so much the Mr. Reddy or the school or the building. I view it as, what can we do for the community? Anything you would be willing to do would benefit the children, the community, right? And so it sounds like you're not unwilling to have those conversations. You just, number one, you didn't like the manner in which it was presented. And number two, it seemed to be they were unwilling to budge off of this is what we need or else.
Yeah, and I think there's also just some difficulty in generally the approach. So if you look back at the letter, it doesn't evaluate the specific project. What it says is, given the current approvals that the city of CUNA has granted, the proposed plats put them beyond district capacity, not actual numbers. And so, we don't know what the actual numbers are, but when we reached out to the State Board of Education, and we see that these are the student counts year by year and the significant drop off after you get to ninth grade, we start to wonder, when there isn't that data to go for this particular development, and then we do our own research and we see this, it makes us, wonder, right? And then, this is the comparison, I think it was mentioned that they're falling short of what the Tischler-Bice study projected. It's pretty significantly short of it. So, without understanding what, the true impacts are, it makes it hard to say, okay, here's something that we can do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal.
So with everything that you've just said, I guess I'm following on, and don't get me wrong, I don't like the way that the CUNA School District is approaching this either. I find that, if you can't do an impact fee, then you can't do an impact fee. You have to find other ways of funding, period. That said, it seems like your approach is, we're going to do nothing. So that is equally as unsavory to me, because I guarantee every realtor that shows every home in the entire subdivision is going to brag about the schools and how good they are. And I think that we can all see what's happening in the communities, and the schools that are here, West Ada, Boise, and CUNA, they're overcrowded. So, my son's fortunate. He goes to a charter school that's not overcrowded by design, but the rest of the school district can't do that. They have to serve the kids that are there, have to. So we can't ignore that either. They are overcrowded. I don't think that anybody's going to, I would hope that nobody would argue that. All you have to do is go spend some time in a school. Go walk through one. Go volunteer in one. I do. They're overcrowded. Period. We can't ignore that. I don't care how unsavory what was just presented was presented. The fact of the matter is they're overcrowded. And I struggle with sitting here, application after application after application, hearing the feedback from our community, the people that we're supposed to represent, about how the schools are overcrowded, and we do nothing about it. Zero, which is exactly what you said you're going to do. Nothing.
Commissioner Seal, if I could.
Help me wrap my head around that.
Well, I first of all, I don't think that I'll back up. The question is what to do, right? The question is not, and I don't think what you do is you say $3,000 at a time is going to solve the problem, even if it were legal. What has to happen is that if there truly is a capacity issue, and I've been in front of you talking about the various enrollments in West Ada and in CUNA. I just showed you the numbers from CUNA and West Ada. We've talked about the fact every middle school in West Ada, other than Victory and Star, has had reductions in enrollment over the past few years. So yes, there's an crowding question, but then there's the question of, are we a good steward of the taxpayer dollar if we're building buildings that may not be fully utilized later? And that's up for the school districts to decide, not me. But to solve that problem, you're not going to do it $3,000 at a time. You're going to do it through a bond. And because that's the only tool that the Idaho legislature has given us. So we have to get the bonds passed, because you're not going this approach, even if there was an approved impact fee, I don't think you build a school with impact fees either. You got to do it with the big chunks that come from bonding, and that's the only solution we have in this state.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I don't know if anybody here can answer it. Do the people that will live in this subdivision, are they able to vote on the bonds that will impact the city of CUNA or the?
If they're in CUNA School District, they should.
Okay.
Any other questions for our applicant before we?
Yeah, just because I'm a relatively new resident to Idaho, but I came from a state where impact fees assessed on homes were driving the price of homes. So they became less and less affordable. And that's my concern here, as you spoke to. The $3,100, quick math I did, was $131,000 per 40 homes. Would you just tack that onto the cost of the house? I mean, I assume that's what a developer would, I mean, as a business person.
Yeah, Commissioner Garrett, that's exactly right. And we're kind of teetering on that in this state right now, that happening, for a number of reasons, including House Bill 389 from a couple of years ago that limits the growth in budgets in any taxing district. What we're starting to see is those kind of fees getting tacked on to the per door costs, and it's essentially a cost and burden shift onto the new homeowner to take care of things that may otherwise already be a need, but it's certainly not going to aid in our housing affordability crisis that we have. And but that is coming. Like I personally don't think, unless the legislature changes course on House Bill 389, we're going to see a lot more informal fees like that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to close the public hearing for, I forgot where we were for a second. For Summerlin, is it Summerland?
Yes.
Summerland West. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, I lost my direction there for a second. Okay, so I just want to reiterate for the commissioners, we are talking about three things in particular for tonight's motion. We are talking about the CUNA School District and how that impacts this application. We are talking about the community public hearing and if it met the code for the city of Meridian to allow that the way it happened, and the disputed public road between Jack and this application. So with that in mind, as we deliberate or discuss, those are the items that we'll be talking about. Is that correct, Kurt?
Madam Chair, that's a great description, but I want to maybe broaden that a bit. So the the public hearing tonight was focused on those three topics, but now that you concluded, we also had the public hearing from 2 weeks ago. So now before you is the entire
The entire
project. So
application, okay.
all that is fair game. Our testimony tonight was limited to those three topics, but now you're making a decision on the complete application or applications plural. So all that is fair game for deliberation and for your discussion. And I also, since I have the microphone on public, and be quiet, I'll be quiet later, but it might, to assist the commission in particular, it might be helpful, Linda, if you could put the applicant's request for condition changes back on the screen, just so that it sort of is front and center for deliberation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, while they're doing that, I'll go ahead and start and give my 2 cents worth. As far as the neighborhood meeting, COVID changed everything as far as whether things are done in person or whether they're not. And there has been a trend to do it over Zoom. And when you have technology, when it works great, it's great. And when it doesn't, it doesn't. Based on the emails that Heath had talked about, I feel like they did due diligence to be able to get a hold of the landowner and try to address those concerns. And it seems to me that they'd still disagree, but you know, that attempt was made and we asked you to do that and you did that and I appreciate that. In regard to the disputed private road, it seems like those 2 things have been resolved and that's great. They reached out to each other and have a common understanding of how that's going to go forward. In regard to the school district, you know, I've worked in education as a volunteer for a long time. I've been part of the state PTA. I just actually retired about 2 years ago for the last 16 years. So I've been in schools for a long time, including servicing the CUNA School District as well as West Ada. I've testified in front of the House Education Committee and the Senate Education Committee. And this opens a whole can of worms where there's a constitutional obligation from the state of Idaho to fund public education. And that includes the buildings. And so, you know, Governor Little's doing something about it, but it's just never seems to be enough, especially when we have everything backlogged. With that in that spirit, I commend you of coming with a new idea out of the box. That's a little bit different, but it seems like its delivery seems to be rubbing some people the wrong way. So there's some definitely takeaway points there to maybe reword that kind of stuff. But I also agree with Commissioner Seal that to do nothing for the community to help sell your product within your community also is just as bad as possibly saying, you know, we want this X number of dollars per house. So at the end, we're servicing our families and our children. It's only in your best interest to be able to come up with a product that the realtors, like he said, can come forward and saying, these schools are great. There's plenty of room for your kids. They can grow and they can do all these things. Does it have a specific dollar amount or trade in value? I'm not really sure, but if you don't ask, then nobody's going to give. And so, you know, going forward, maybe that can be reworded, you know, and you're still going to service the kids whether they do or not. You're just not going to give your stamp of approval. And finally, as far as the application is concerned, the open space looked good. The overall design was mostly okay. You had a blank slate and yet you still put 5 private roads in there with houses stacked on top of each other, which always causes concerns for services, whether it's mail or garbage or anything else on that. And, you know, without having to come through a redesign, that part I don't like. You know, I think there was plenty of room to be able to come up with some ideas on those curves so that you didn't have to do it. Code says you can, but just because you can doesn't mean you always should. And so that part of the overall design of the entire application, I don't support. But we are the recommending body and not the decision makers. And so I'll go on record to say that, you know, these private streets are just going to become a complete nightmare when neighbors are on top of each other. So those are my comments as far as everything kind of in a nutshell. I hope I kind of hit everything that we've kind of talked about. I'd like to open it to the other commissioners to give your thoughts as well. Who would like to start? Am I the only one tonight?
Madam Commissioner,
Commissioner.
I won't let you be the only one. Yeah, I think you hit on the first 2 points, the school, or not the school, the access and the neighbors, in full agreement with you there. Glad that we were able to resolve the access issues. As far as the conditions, I'm in favor of the applicant's request to delete condition 2, 3C, and 3D. If you remember from our discussion, 3D in particular seems pretty egregious to go for a bridge across the Rossin Canal that is a bridge to nowhere in many ways. So I'm in favor of deleting all 3 of those. Regarding the school issue, we want to be careful of not allowing manipulation to creep into processes. And ultimately, the voters of CUNA have spoken on multiple occasions to shoot down this bond. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. But I also don't think that a $3,000 fee per door is going to do much. Governor Little is sending $18 million to the school district for ongoing maintenance items. That's not even half of the ongoing items that are there, let alone building new schools. This is infinitesimal against the problems that are there. And this problem has to be solved through a bond. Even their own letter says, most importantly, bonds are what we need. And I think the school district needs to focus their energy on rallying the community around something that can pass. That's where this needs to be solved, not in trying to strong arm developers in what I'm going to call is a pay for play scenario. There's no other way to put it. That is exactly what this is. That's not right. That's not the tools that the legislator and the state constitution have given to school districts. We have to operate within the framework that we're given. This is outside of that framework. It is creative. I don't think it's in the spirit of the law, even if it's technically not illegal. And I'm in favor of approving this and hope that the CUNA School District and their board will revisit this entire concept and put more effort into, I'm glad to hear they're considering another bond and figure out what will speak to the nature of their constituents. But I don't want to see governmental bodies doing an end run around their own voters. Their own voters need to be on board. And if they don't see the need, they're the ones that are being impacted. Then who are we as a planning and zoning of a separate city to thwart that or to counter that? So those are my thoughts. I'm going to be supporting this application.
Very much.
Madam Chair.
Grace?
So it's unfortunate that the parties can't find some amicable way to work through some of these things, to find some elegant solution to this. On the one hand, the manner in which it was presented by the school district is causing all of us some concern, I think, and it's wise, maybe advice from our chair that in the future, maybe work on the messaging there. But I appreciate Commissioner Seal saying what he said, because he articulated it better. I was having a real problem with the fact that it didn't seem like the developer, the applicant, was willing to come even a quarter of a way either. They were so offended by the manner in which the school district acted that they just, took their glove and ball and went home. And that does not help the community. So it is unfortunate. And it's also unfortunate that we're being, we and the city council and other cities as well, not just Meridian, are being forced to choose between quality schools, with adequate capacity and affordable housing. And it's part of the job, I guess, but it's just unfortunate. I agree with Commissioner Russ that I think ultimately the solution, the long-term solution to these issues is probably a bond. And we've seen it all over that it's difficult to get these passed, especially when lots of people are moving in without kids and they don't see the need for the bonds. And I don't think denial of this application is going to probably ultimately solve the problem. So there's been a lot of thought and effort into this. I think ultimately I probably will recommend approval of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to issue or make a statement that I just find it difficult for this group to get involved with a school issue in another city. And if the voters can't support it, if their bond failed, I don't think that should be on the back of the P and Z committee in Meridian, Idaho. I think I don't know whose fault that was, a bad sales job or bad voters. But somehow they have to reach a happy medium. If the people want to move to CUNA, they're going to have to recognize the necessity for schools and what they have to do. And to put us in that position, I think is just, I can't agree with it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Seal?
I'll just say we are in that position with every application. So again, I mean, just visit a school. All you got to do is volunteer. You can see it firsthand. It's not that difficult. So that's the seat that I speak from. So that's the knowledge that I have. That said, you know, there's some things on the application. I'll just speak to the application in itself and the conditions that are up here. So I'm fine with deleting condition number 2 and 3D. 3C, I think it should stay. So that's my opinion on that. Just to get those out of the way. As far as the public meeting goes, I find it, we'll just use the word unsavory again, that you're not allowing voice communication. I find that disrespectful. I mean, if you were to come to this council meeting and all we let you do is type, you'd probably have a few more words you'd want to fit in there. And a lot of these people that live around, they want to have their voice heard. And I think maybe explaining the ground rules to people that are going to show up to this at a minimum would probably help a lot. But I find that you don't let people speak insulting, personally. If that were my experience, and I do belong to a company where we go and we can only put, you know, we can only type words in, but we're a worldwide company with millions of employees. So I get it. So, and I understand there's a safety issue. Things are getting more aggressive. That's only going to get worse from here on out. So, but, you know, again, the public meeting portion of this, to not be able to speak is, I don't know, I can't even find the right word for it. So it's insulting to me. As far as the schools, again, I mean, yes, it's unsavory. I don't like the way that it is approached, or at least the way it has been described to be approached at this point in time. But the schools are overcrowded. I mean, again, we sit here application after application after application. We get public testimony. Generally, there's a lot more public testimony that comes in about people that have to, you know, wait for their kids to be bused to the other side of town, or they have to open enroll in another school district in order to have, you know, the same things afforded to their children as the school district that can't provide it. So do I believe that a bond is probably the best way? Sure, but it's not happening. And you can see the desperation in the school district to come up with something like this in order to afford that. I get it. You got to do something. You can't do nothing. And I understand that not passing or by approving this one application isn't going to make a difference. But if you deny 10, it might. You deny 20, it could. Maybe people will start getting the message that we have to do something. But doing nothing is not an option. And that's just where I see this application at. It does nothing other than provide some more houses. I mean, as far as the $3,000, it's a one-time fee. People can afford that when they buy a house. How much is it going to add to their tax bill every year, year after year, for the next 50 years while that house is inhabited? I'm going to guess it's a sketch more than $3,000. Somebody's going to pay it somewhere along the line. So end around or not, unsavory or not, it's the reality of the situation that they're in. So, you know, considering that the application that's at hand in front of us, I can't support it. And, you know, we need better schools. We don't need more houses.
This is a tough one. because there's elements within our communities that are beyond our ability to make a huge change. You know, it's the Idaho legislature, it's the city of Meridian's code on neighborhood meetings. It's, you know, it's impact fees or in-kind donations to be able to help the community. I mean, it's a pretty stacked deck here. So we are the recommending body to city council. And I know they look at our comments, so they will have a full list of everything that we have to say, but we do need to make a motion and we do need to vote. So, our school situation is not going to be fixed tonight, and it most likely won't be fixed with this application, but it could also send a message if we choose to pass it or deny it. But that's why we're a group and we all have our opinions, and, you know, it's not one person making that decision, right?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Rust.
I would like to make a motion, if that's appropriate. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council of file number H-2024-0023 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 21st, 2024, with the following modifications: the deletion of condition 2, 3C, and 3D.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and second to approve file number 0023 as presented in the staff report with the modifications listed. All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and those denial?
Nay.
Nay, the way the motion was presented. I,
Madam Chair, did you cast your vote?
I did not.
You will, I ask you to do so. We have a 2-2 split at the moment.
Right. So I guess before I want to cast my vote, I would want to know what you didn't. But
yeah, Madam Chair, I just agreed with Commissioner Seal that I did not, I'm not agreeing to modify condition 3C.
oh, I see. Okay. I will vote denial.
Just for clarification, Madam Chair and Commissioner, so the motion failed, so that's not a denial of the application.
Oh,
The
excuse me,
motion
it
failed.
failed. Yeah.
I would encourage the chair to entertain another motion.
All right, Commissioner Rust, well, does anybody want to make a different motion?
Madam Chair, I can take a stab at this.
I would, but I wouldn't get a second.
Let me find my spot here. Okay. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council file number H-2024-0023 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 21st, 2024, with the following modifications. Except deletion of condition 2 and deletion of condition 3D.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve file number 0023 by deleting condition 2, which requires attached townhomes, and condition 3D for the stub road. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Do you need me to cast a vote? I think we have 3 and 1.
You're certainly allowed to vote. I wouldn't compel you to do so, but I think, Madam Clerk, do you have I counted 3 yays and 1 nay. Is that your count?
Madam Chair, did you cast your vote with that?
I did not.
So that would be correct, the 3-1.
To the extent Madam Chair chooses not to vote, you can reflect that as an abstention.
Abstain. And so it passes 3-1 for approval to City Council. All right, thank you very much. Commissioners, we have conditional use permit next. Does anybody need to take a break or do you want to keep going through? Keep pulling through? Okay. All right, we will take a 3-minute break and then we will start the conditional use permit. Thanks. Is Washington Mutual here, or Washington Federal, excuse me? Are you here? Can you wait a few more minutes before you do your application? Okay. All right. We have a guest here tonight from our artist community here in Meridian, and she needs to go sooner than later. So if you don't mind, we're just going to switch that around, and it shouldn't take very long. Hi.
Taylor. I reside at 2386. I prefer not to use it, but
I know,
if
but
you insist,
we
I
can
will.
hear,
I'm
need to
Lizzie
hear it.
Taylor. I reside at 2386 West Chateau Drive in Meridian, 83646, with a wonderful husband, a fabulous art collection, and 2 big cats.
Okay.
I am here representing the Meridian Arts Commission, which has 3 separate subcommittees. The first one is Initial Point Gallery Subcommittee. Initial Point, if you're not familiar with it, is on the 3rd floor of City Hall. It's open City Hall hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay, the other part of Meridian Arts Commission is Events and Outreach, which brings you such things as concerts on Broadway in the summertime. The other one is Public Art, which brings you to, it brings art to the public areas in parks on the north side of the Meridian Co-op. That's Meridian Arts Commission. Anyway, by 1 minute of background, I have been an artist all my life. I'm an exhibiting, practicing artist here in Meridian, where I've lived for 12 years. I administer the art wall at the Meridian Co-op. If you haven't seen it, please do. It's wonderful. I've been doing that for 4 years. And when I say administer, that means they do not pay me anything. Okay. And let's see, and I volunteered at the Braille Institute in Los Angeles, not teaching the tactile language, but teaching art classes, sculpture, collage, and a couple others to blind and partially sighted adults, which was a humbling experience and a very demanding one at that. And I also got to know a lot of service animals. It was a wonderful experience. Okay, let's talk about Initial Point for a couple of minutes. The reason I don't like to use the microphone is that I can't really make eye contact with everybody, but excuse that. Okay, first of all, how do we get art there? We send out what is called a call to artists in about March. It's all done electronically. It's no, loving hands at home, little envelopes and stuff like that, like it used to be. Artists apply, and we urge them to be very, very complete in their application, because if we don't know who they are or where to find them, that's going to make our life difficult. Okay, we get an increasing number of applicants every year. When I joined the Arts Commission probably 5 years ago, it was lucky if we got 14 or 15. Now we're getting in the general vicinity of 50 to 60 per year. Okay, the Initial Point Gallery Subcommittee, of which I am the chair, takes the first look at the art that is submitted by people. It has to fit guidelines for art in a municipal space. So it can't be political, it cannot be religious, it cannot be erotic, it can't contain any sort of representation of drug use of any sort. It has to be applicable for a city hall. But just because it's applicable doesn't mean it is going to be dull and boring. We have a tremendous variety of art from a tremendous number of people throughout the year. Okay, so the subcommittee takes a first look at the art, and we recommend, and it's both subjective and mathematical. Okay, these people, these artists are the ones that we think would be okay for Initial Point Gallery. Below a certain point, for whatever reasons. Okay, art is kind of a subjective thing. Then that list and all the images goes to the whole Meridian Arts Commission, which has 9 people. So it's not just my subcommittee that does the choosing, it's the entire commission. And that is, again, somewhat subjective. My feeling is that a commissioner doesn't have to like a piece of art or want to have it in their home to say, yeah, this suits the city. It would be a nice thing for a lot of people to see. So I don't have to like it, but it does have to meet those criteria. And for the most part, artists understand that, and it's very good. Okay, who gets to exhibit? We choose the artists, then it goes back to the subcommittee, and we group. Depending on how much space an artist wants, there's about 100 feet, 50 feet on this side, 50 feet on this side. Most artists do not take the whole gallery. That would be a tremendous undertaking. Most, if they want to be a solo person, they take 25 feet. They might group with a couple of other artists and do the whole 100 feet, but that's rare. The three main groups that exhibit almost annually are Treasure Valley Artists Alliance, TVAA, and you have on your desks the poster for the upcoming TVAA show. You also have on your desks the schedule for the entire year of 2025, which took a lot of work to put together. There is nothing casual about this. Okay, so TVAA, the other big group is BOSCO, BOSCO, which stands for Boise Open Studios Collective. They always have a theme for a show. You might want to read down the category. It's a very cute name. I forget it right at the moment, but Bosco is always a very, very good show. And the other big group show that we have is from West Ada School District. That happens in May every year, and it is a lollapalooza of a show. It's about 60 or 65 pieces, and it's a beautiful show because all of the frames around all of the art are exactly the same. So it looks like a real downtown gallery. It's not this hodgepodge of a little bit of gilt and a little bit of metal and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So how do artists sell through Initial Point Gallery? We provide a name tag for the art with the artist's name, what it's made out of, if it's oil or acrylic or whatever. But then on the wall, there is contact information for the artist and the artist's asking price for the piece. So in other words, if I want to buy a piece from Commissioner Seal, I will contact him either by email or phone or text or whatever. Any financial arrangements are between the buyer and the artist. Initial Point is not in the business of selling art. We're not in the business of doing that at all. We do ask for a 20% donation from the artist. We realize that that is not always possible, but it's very, very nice. It helps us with our operating budget of about $700. And we do an awful lot of stuff. Anyway, is there an area that I might not have covered that you'd like to know about? Yes.
Oh, he's good.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much. I hope that this presentation might get you, pardon my language, goosed up a little bit to go and see Initial Point Gallery. The openings are really very special because it gives you and your significant other or your coworkers or you and your kids a really good chance to meet honest to gosh artists in person and ask them questions and how do you do it and all like that. So anyway, thank you very, very much for your time. I very much appreciate being here.
I do have one question for you.
Certainly.
So I'm in the impact area of Highway 16 out at McDermott and Ustick. And back in the way back days, that used to be the train, the Meridian stub out there. And Meridian McDermott Station was a little town right there. And we're getting some call boxes or electrical boxes put out there. And I love the artwork that is on the cable boxes or electrical boxes around.
Right.
Like the little dog right in front of the Boys and Girls Club is
Right.
super sweet. Who would we contact to possibly get some historical photos to remind Meridian that this was part of our community and not just another subdivision out there?
Great question, Commissioner, Madam Chair, excuse me, I'm losing it, I'm tired. Cassandra Schiffler. Can Tina arrange for that to happen?
I'll do it. I mean, that's just personal, so, but yes, we saved Mr. McDermott's house. We're very excited that we were able to do that. And I'm trying to convince my husband to put a big mural on the side that says, "Welcome to McDermott Station," and maybe have people inquire well, why would you have that? And remind people that the interurban used to come right through our town and what that represented for Meridian and the farmers and all that kind of stuff.
Great question.
And
Cassandra
so
will be able to address
lovely
that.
to be able to, I'd love to see more of that of our history, not just in the downtown corridor, because we have one of the very few walking tours, right? You can
Right.
do it on your own. And I think we were one of the first as a city to be able to do that, which is fabulous. And then, you know, just even with the dual silos and making sure that that finds a good home and just kind of just remembering our history and where we came from before we keep growing. So, but I'll take care of that side of it, but Tina now.
Very good comment. And the Arts Commission is very aware that we are where we are because of where we have been and where we were. And we'd like to honor that. We can't force artists to do something that is only of historic significance, but we encourage that. Our application material says, you know, look forward, that's terrific, but also look back. And, you know, dairy days and the agriculture and all of those sorts of things are very important to us. We're not just, the Arts Commission in the eyes of a lot of people is just a bunch of little old ladies who think that art is really nice. We're very, very serious about what we do.
Good.
Any other
Thank you for
questions?
being here. We greatly appreciate it.
And thank you for changing my little time slot. I'm an old person. I need to go home.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. All right. Thank you for being so patient. We greatly appreciate it. All right. Our final application of the evening is 2024-0051. Washington Federal requests a conditional use permit at 10 Mile for a drive-through near a residential area. And we will start with the staff report. Thank you.
Good
for being
yeah.
patient.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So yeah, next item on the agenda is the conditional use permit for WaFd Bank. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for a 2,435 square foot drive-through establishment within 300 feet of another drive-through facility and residential use. The site consists of 0.77 acres of land located at 688 North Cliff Creek Lane. As shown on the screen, the current zoning is CC and the flume designation is mixed-use community. The subject property is part of Mile High Pines subdivision that was annexed with a concept plan in 2020. The concept plan shows a bank with a drive-through on the property to the north of the one where it is currently proposed to be developed, which is generally consistent with the proposed development. They swapped the bank and the retail building from the concept plan, so it is generally consistent. The proposed use of financial institution and drive-through establishment aligns well with the mixed-use community future land use designation, which supports a blend of residential, commercial, and recreational uses. By offering service options within proximity to residential, both residential areas and existing commercial developments, this project contributes to both community overall livability and sustainability. The site plan includes a single access point via private drive aisle, West Treva Lane on the southern side of the property, along with a cross access to the property to the north. Vehicles will enter from the south side with parking available to the west and the drive-through on the eastern side fronting on 10 Mile. The parking is in compliance with the UDC and actually exceeds the parking that is required by 13 stalls. Building materials can consist of EIFS, stucco, stone veneer, aluminum panels with the appearance of wood, parapet metal wall caps, and glazing. The conceptual elevations appear to meet the standards in the UDC and Architectural Standards Manual. Staff is recommending approval with conditions and has talked with the applicant, and they are in agreement with the staff report. I'll stand for any questions at this time.
All right. Would the applicant like to come forward? Sure. You've spent all this time in here. You might as well say hello. If you can just say your name and address for the record.
Yep, my name is Dylan Cooper and my address is 577 North Meeker Avenue in Boise Avenue.
Thank you. Any other comments that you'd make on the staff report other than what Nick gave us?
Nope, I appreciate him taking the time to review it. Again, we are a community bank looking to serve, the community as a whole, both, as a residential bank and also commercial. We try to put ourselves in great locations where we can serve the most amount of people possible and really just are looking forward to expanding in, our footprint in Meridian as well.
Do you have one on Franklin? Is that Washington Federal?
No, we have one.
Is that Washington something else?
Yes, there might be Washington Mutual. So there's a lot of Washingtons. There is one actually right up here off of, let me see here. It's off of Meridian and Yeah, that is Franklin. That is, yeah, that's Washington. Yeah, that is
Right,
Franklin.
right by,
Yeah, right by the
right by
cemetery.
the cemetery?
Yeah, and so we may look to consolidate and move out to and sell that property depending on how well this branch does. You know, the 10-mile corridor is obviously growing and expanding, and we feel like that is a very ideal location for us to be.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair, just a quick one. So do people still go into banks?
It's a very good question. And again, the pandemic changed a lot of things for physical locations for banks. And that is why we are focusing more on ideal locations. We still need to serve the community mostly in the commercial sense or in the business sense. Small businesses still need a place to go in and do business. You know, that's why we are trying to put ourselves in a place where we're high visibility. You know, again, 10 Mile is very much a growing corridor. And so, yes, it is one thing that we are focused on is what is the future of physical retail and banking. But again, we are very focused on small and medium-sized businesses just because that is kind of the future of a physical retail location.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved.
I'm sorry, before we take, my apologies for interrupting, but before we vote on that, Madam Clerk, can you just confirm there's no one signed up to testify from
that's-
the public?
My gosh, I'm like way ahead of myself here. Oh,
Thank you. No one has signed up.
all right.
Thank you.
And he's the only one in chamber, so I'm going to go with that. All right. Okay, let's try that again. Can I
Madam
get a
Chair?
motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second?
All right, it's been moved and second to close the public hearing for Washington Federal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thanks, Kurt, for keeping me on my toes here. Any conversation about this location for Washington Federal? All right, well, if that's the case, I will go ahead and put a motion. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2024-0051 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of November 21st, 2024 with no modifications.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve Washington Federal. All those in say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Madam
I'll
Chair,
take one more.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Happy